A transformative team coach and former global commercial leader, he's helped scale and transform marketing, medical, leadership teams at some of the world's biggest pharma companies. Now he teaches leaders how to coach, adapt, and thrive in complex, fast-moving environments. He's the founder of Hive Logic. He's the author of Be Wise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive. He's certified agile coach and a believer in better ways of working. Philip Atkinson, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Welcome to the Leadership That Sells podcast, where we help you lead first and sell more with great insights and tactics from the best minds we can find. Every leader is in sales, whether you're selling products, ideas, a mission or a vision, and great sales team in particular need great sales leaders. When managers bring out the best in their teams, targets get hit on time every time without stress. But most sales leaders never learn how to lead. They wing it or they repeat bad habits and the cycle continues. Sales leaders need practical, real-world ideas that fit their busy schedules, and that's why we created the Leadership That Sells Playbook course. 9 short weeks changes your world. Check it out at the Practical Leadership Academy. And now, on with the show.
Thank you, Paul. It's lovely to be here.
Well, did I miss anything? You've been around for a while.
like many people, yes. I think that's all-encompassing, and let's find out more as we discuss together.
Well, we'll roll with that then. So you have here, and this is a magnificent book, 12 leadership lessons from a busy beehive. You and 12 guest writers that you picked from your background, your network. That was fairly bold, picking 12 people together. Why did you bring other people into each chapter for a start? Let's just go with the meta thing first.
Paul, thank you. I realized I don't do any of my work by myself. And in fact, people very rarely are experts at anything by themselves. Life is better with collaborating with other good people. Innovation, ideas, exchange, communication, it's all a partnership. So I wrote the first chapter and realized, that's my opinion. Let me hear from someone else. Let me be challenged. And in the first chapter, an expert on organizational design said, I don't agree with Philip. Let's discuss. And that's great. So the book is a dialogue between me and 12 experts.
Oh, that's superb. Okay, so that's why you get 12 people together. You have the dialogue, you're bringing, I'm a firm believer in collective intelligence. If you have 3 people in a room, you don't have 3 brains, you have 6 different conversations going on, which is the best part. If you can take us back a little bit about your inspiration for doing this, what first drew you to bees as a metaphor for leadership? Was there a moment where it just went,
Just a quick story. You mentioned some of the study I've done. I was studying work stuff, and then I thought, in my home life, I want to study a home hobby. There's nothing to do with work, and I started to become a beekeeper 18 years ago. And it took me a few years to realize it's a fabulous metaphor for a complex organization and life today. And I was just sitting outside an office on a summer's day as people were coming and going and bringing
buzzing in.
Yeah, exactly. And then it became a metaphor that made it easier to have the difficult conversations that have to happen.
Uh-huh.
So it's just a useful tool to open up people to think and pause and reflect a bit more. And it's served clients very well since then.
I wonder if bees are actually smarter than we are. Probably in very many ways. Different sorts of intelligence. I like the idea of different sorts of intelligences. You look at David Beckham and you say, how intelligent is he? And you're thinking, not so much. You put a ball at that man's feet, he's really damn intelligent with his toes. Okay, different sorts. Don't ask me to make honey.
He's a beekeeper now as well.
I heard, yes.
There's a good point there, Paul. We can't just look at the world through our own lenses and assume that's right. So actually, the bee's intelligence is something that we actually just don't understand yet. We understand a lot more, and in life, we need to look at things with open eyes and let go of old beliefs and old patterns and behaviours.
I see that when you have a wasp that sneaks in the back of a beehive, if it gets in the back and it's probably fine. But if it tries to go in the front door, it'll get beaten out. So if you're in and you're behaving in the same way as everybody else, there's probably something there. We can I'm sure there are endless directions we can take this down. You teach leaders to coach, and we try to be really pragmatic and practical here, make sure that we have a how-to takeaway. What would you say the first skill is that you want you're an ex-salesperson as well. What is the first skill you'd want a sales manager to learn?
And I think this is the sales 101.
Mm.
It's about asking better questions and listening more. That's it.
Okay. You've taken over your sales team. You're looking around you, and you're wondering, why are all these people who are doing the same thing not working together? What have I done wrong?
Thank you. It's a whole interesting topic. There is a chapter in the book all about teamwork and about different types of teams. In English, we only have one word for things that are hot weather, hot food, etc. And it's not good enough. And then we use one word meaning team. In actual fact, there are two types of teams. And sales teams are classically lots of individuals who do their work outside of the group. In actual fact, but you can elevate the performance by helping the teams learn with and from each other. Sales teams are not competing with each other. They're competing for external opportunities. And the role of a sales manager should be to help a team function better through better learning. And that's an important step. It's not, you're not controlling and competing with a team. The team needs to invest time to sharpen their tools, to be better, to share experience, to share failures. And that's a hard step if you haven't grown up with that model. If you've just grown up with, this is my results, this is how I'm doing, a team cannot benefit from all of those years of experience.
And typically, I think you find it's the sales manager themselves who has come from a poor education background. I don't mean not badly educated. They just haven't had the opportunity to learn from anybody who knows better. They repeat the bad experiences that they've done. And they then set up the environment for failure. They then set people up to compete against each other. If not they're competing for commission or something like that, depending how you structure that, if you're mad enough to do something like that. But you're competing for attention. You're almost I just got a kitten, believe it or not. I got a little kitten, and my two older cats don't like it.
Yep.
So the kitten is now, the older cats, in fact, are competing for attention. They're competing for affection. Which in a team of grown-up, not nasty, but grown-up, gnarly is a good word, salespeople, men and women, they compete for approbation, they compete for attention, they compete for affection. Oh, that was really well done, is all you need. So often.
And I think that framework of competition, which does drive sales, effective sales behavior, people are competitive, but a sales team shouldn't be competitive with each other. They should be competitive for better results externally. And therefore, the role of a sales manager should be to create an environment for growth, to improve better learning within the team. And you're right, they've often been promoted because of good sales, not because of good leadership and insights about human behavior. And that's what we're in the business of.
So when you write in your book here, Be Wise, right? So I'm going to wave this again here. If you're listening in the podcast on audio, I'm holding up a book, and it's a very, very good one, and I would highly recommend it. Be Wise: 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive by Philip Atkinson and guest writers, published by Buzzworks, and you can see the link in the description here on this episode. Now, there's a few things that I just want to dig into here. You talk about the hive teaching us that roles matter. And bees going through these 7 distinct roles. And any team has different roles. They have supporting roles, they have performers, they have all these different things. I think you're talking that an individual leader has to understand and value the different types of role and also the evolution of those roles. Can you talk us through that? What do the bees do, and how can we do it better?
Great. What the bees do is crazy. When they hatch, the female worker bees have 7 different jobs. They become builders.
I understand that. I totally understand having 7 different jobs.
But they do them one after another. They do them sequentially.
Okay.
So first of all, they are trained to be builders, and they are the best builders they can possibly be. They are supported by their peers to be the best builders. And then that's just for 3 or 4 days, and then they stop and they spend time training the previous bee, the newly hatched bees to be builders, and then they do something completely different, which is to be nurses. And it carries on, and they only fly for the last 2 or 3 days of their life. You know, bees, a beehive is not
Really?
just like salespeople knocking on doors. There's a whole infrastructure. So when you see a bee flying, be kind to it. It's at the peak of its career, and it's the last 3 days of its life. That's it.
Wow. Okay, so next time somebody comes knocking in my door trying to sell me something, I'm going to invite them in for a plate of soup.
Please do, please do. Now, look, the metaphor, or just to open up some thinking in terms of career development, we need to move and evolve between different roles to be really good at the role you are in. Invest in being a mentor and a trainer for other people coming in, and learn to do the best in the current role you're in, and keep an eye on the horizon of what other roles are needed, what skills do you need, what training, what capabilities. So and then build like the bees. It doesn't need to be the old model was you go up and up and up and up, and at some
Hmm.
point, a narrow organization, there's not enough room when you're out. But in this day and age, the world is changing so quickly. I encourage everyone to be far more lateral in their thinking, and just really pay constant attention to self-awareness. What do I love? What am I good at? What do I need to learn? How do I need to keep moving? And that can be sideways and sideways and sideways, and then rocketing up.
Hmm.
There's many different paths now, and we support clients to do that.
Yeah, I think breadth rather than height or altitude, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got what's it, the Tony Robbins things? Your attitude determines your altitude. Well, yes, fair enough, but I think your attitude towards your own development and your ability to serve, and it really means a lot for me that if you recognize that you're here, you're put here to serve customers, yourself, your families, other people, and it's very, very good for you. It's healthy for you to serve. First thing you say to somebody who's miserable is go out and help somebody else.
Yeah. And it's our careers are our own responsibility.
Mm.
Actually, don't wait for HR to tap you on the shoulder. Don't assume that your boss is looking out for your
Nope.
next career step. They're important. Serve the community by working out where you can have an impact. And,
Yeah.
and yes, of course, HR and your boss can be important stakeholders, but it's not their responsibility. It's our own individual responsibility.
The best moments I think I've had with teams who've worked for me, when I think I got it almost right, was talking to them when I hire people and say, I don't expect you to be here forever. And you see the face of the HR person next to you going, oh, you can't say that. And then the face of the little person next that you're interviewing sort of going, what? No,
Yeah,
I don't understand. That's okay. I don't think you're going to retire in this job.
good. Very
No, of
good.
course not. I
Yeah,
expect this to be a tour of duty. You will have a year to learn where the toilets are and what the coffee is all about, and to learn the job. A year to master it. A year
yeah,
to excel and to look forward. What's the next thing, and then a year to prepare for the next thing. Now, hopefully, the next thing will be within this organization, maybe within my organization. If not, let's talk about what that looks like and make sure you have the skills and the experiences to take forward. Yeah.
and then and also on that way, as you're in your first, second, and then third year, invest in supporting the new people.
Hmm.
That's good. That's good for them.
Mentoring, the bringing
It's good
people
for
along.
you. It's servant leadership through and through. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hives operate differently in different seasons. I learned this.
Yeah.
And you talk about leaderships needing to understand the cyclical nature of energy, of output, of growth, and of renewal. Tell me more. How does that apply to me and my team?
Thank you. It actually applies to everything. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an ending.
To
And we
everything
need,
there is a season, to a season for all things.
yeah. And actually, let's look at when you start a new job, for example. Um, Starting a new job is easy. You get a bunch of flowers, maybe, and you get a welcome card, and you get a buddy, or you start a project and it's exciting. And I don't think we pay enough attention to the cyclical nature of closing things well. We might be on a project, it might not have worked, but there might be a lot of learning, a lot of intelligence, a lot of wisdom that comes from it. And I think we all need to pay more attention to how to close things. And it's the same with a job. If you're leaving a job, closing and leaving is as hard work as starting a new one. So pay attention to what you need to do to have a good close. And that might include sharing your wisdom and providing feedback and helping the organization. But in life, we're very good at beginnings. And in businesses and in life, I think we're very bad at endings. And we can all benefit from paying more attention to that. Otherwise, it's a bit like having a mental screensaver with too many apps open. There's so many initiatives and projects and ideas, and nothing ever gets landed. And my plea is pay more attention to a closing.
I did some work with a well-being company a while ago, and they were providing an app coaching service for people who were grieving.
Yeah.
And the end piece we're just appalling. We used to be very good at this in life, the endings here. I'm not going to get us down too far, but you'd see a funeral cortege going past the street, and I would remember stopping. Everybody would stop. Men would take their hats off if they were wearing one. They would stop, not that old, but you'd stop at the side of the street and you would just pay attention as they went past. And now we don't like talking about it. We don't even like thinking about it. I have a friend who was on telly a while ago, and it was in the middle of COVID, in fact, and she was a doctor of some description, and she said, well, after all, everybody dies, right? She got Ofcom complaints. I'm a doctor. We're humans. It's kind of inevitable. It happens. But I'm not going to die. I've good news for you. I'm not going to leave this job. Well, yes, you are. It might even be taken from you.
Yes.
It might be taken from you. And the whole thinking about the ending thing here, I think, is underrated in that if you're not ready for it, it'll happen to you.
Exactly.
Rather than you having some degree of agency.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I love... Now, you also talk then in the book about the murder of the drones.
Yes, indeed.
I have to say this slightly. The murder. There's been a murder. The murder of the drones. Go on.
And this is it's a fun way to open up lots of topics. Just basically, 95% of the hive are hard-working females. 5% are males, not men. 5% are males. The male bees can't even feed themselves. They rely on the females to be fed, and their only role is to go out and have sex with the queen. That's it. Now, it's a bit of a fun metaphor, but there becomes a time, October, when the male bees are no longer needed, and therefore they are a drain on resources. Their skills don't match what the organization needs, and the resources are tight in October, and the female worker bees starve them to death. And if it's harsh, if the weather's bad and resources are hard, it's more active, and the female bees go and sting the males and kill them and push them out the front door. Now this is a loose metaphor for working life.
I want to see where you're taking this. You've got a hive with a pile of corpses out the front door. You're there sitting looking at large pharmaceutical with a nice terrace and a pile of corpses. No, what?
Well, there's lots of, it's just, it is actually a fun
cardboard
way
boxes.
Bringing up topics about adapting your skills and knowing what the resources are and anticipating what skills are going to be needed,
right.
And about diversity. So it's a fun entry point to some difficult conversations, and that's how we use it. It's a good one. Yeah.
So you talked at the very beginning here about difficult decisions. What can a bee, or the hive rather, because it's not a bee, teach us about difficult decisions and team consensus?
First of all, there are lots of different decisions that we need to take, and they don't need the same decision-making model. So actually, let's slow down a bit and just work out what is the problem we're facing and what type of decisions and how are we going to take that decision. And some decisions, let's delegate and give consent to people in the group to take a decision, or give consent to people to do the research and make a proposal It doesn't need to be a whole leadership team arguing over which hotel we're going to for the Christmas dinner. Let's be sensible about our time and our resources. What the bees do when they decide, the bees need to decide to move to a new home, and it's called swarming. And that's 50,000 bees all going to a new home, and it is a life or death decision for the whole colony. Now, it's a complex decision, and what they do is they have scout bees that go and fly, and then let's say there are 10 bees go to 10 sites. They're different sites, they're different places. Those 10 bees come back and they report what they have found. And depending on the way they communicate, they're covered in pollen or how voracious and passionate they are about their site, bees go, hang on, I'm noticing what bee number 1 and 2 are saying, and I'm going to check it out for myself. So bees, they do some research, they look at scenarios, they then do a bit of crowdsourcing. So more bees will go to site 1 and 2, and then they'll come back, and then more bees will go, hang on, that looks good. So more bees will go to site 1 and 2, and they're just collecting data. But it might be that bees 8 and 9 say, fair enough, I think 1 and 2 is better. And so they fact find, they take their time to establish the data. And there's no duplication here. They're not competing. They're all trying to take the best decision. And then when there is a critical mass, the entire hive says, yes, we trust that decision, we are going to support it. And that means there are some bees, let's say there are 9 bees who are wrong. And they have to say, I get it. For the good of the hive, for the good of this leadership team, let's support the single decision that has been researched by my colleagues. Let's all go. And they have consensus on the final decision. There is lack of consensus until then, and they argue, if you like, disagree, and then they reach a critical mass of data and they take a single decision that they all stand behind, and then they go as a united front to their new home. And it's very, very effective. And if we just come back to leadership teams, there are lots of different decisions. Take a bit of time thinking about what decision process are we going to use, and then let's stand by it.
Excellent. I think the first decision you need to make is, what sort of decision am I making?
Yeah.
Is it, as you say, booking a hotel, or is it moving the entire team, moving everything?
And how many team meetings have you been in where you can waste time talking about utter rubbish that everyone has an opinion on? Well, actually, Christmas party, honestly, who organized, it doesn't take a leadership team to have these kind of, but leadership teams get carried away wasting time on the wrong things.
Yes.
And everyone's talking and they feel like they're busy because everyone's talking. Think a little bit more what you need to do.
Magnificent. Well, if we wrap this up, I have couple more questions for you. How has your work with the other 12 authors, the work you put into writing the book, how has it changed the way that you lead or consult with organizations?
That's a good question. We come back to collaborating is good. And also I realize I am not always right, and I don't need to be. My job is not to be the command and control top of a hierarchy, not with this book project and not with the way I lead teams. It's actually to listen to other voices, listen to other experts, and come together to find a decision. So actually the book, without unintentionally, has become a role model for good collaborative working and helping everyone to stop and pause and just think a little bit harder about what we're doing. Because our competitive advantage is about thinking harder before doing more stuff. Yeah,
there's the concept of drifting. I think it's maybe Norman Vincent Peale in the Interview with the Devil. I think it was him that did this. Might have been Dale Carnegie, can't remember, one of them. And he says that most people drift. They just drift. And all you need to do to differentiate yourself is to think. Take a second to think. Think about what you're thinking about. Think about what you're doing. Think about where you're going. Think about how you're going to get there. Don't just bash on. As you said, the bees, they don't just fly out and fly off. They put a lot of effort into this. A lot of effort. I'm wonderful, fascinated to hear this.
Organizations drift, and leadership teams drift, and sales teams drift. But everyone thinks they're busy because they're being noisy. But So just give a little bit more thought. That is where the competitive advantage comes from. Think about the bigger stuff. Think about the important stuff. Think about making a difference for your customers. That's where the advantage is.
Last question. If we could understand the dance of the bees from the hive, and it could speak to us directly, and everybody was able to do that, what is the one message you think it would offer us today?
Oh, goodness. Bees communicate in the dark, in a noisy environment, in a very crowded hive. Yet the message is delivered with absolute clarity to 50,000 individuals. And that's through being clear and being consistent and repeating the message. So just, I mean, at a communication level, there's a lot to learn. It might feel like we're in the dark and in the crowded hive and in a noisy place and it's hot and it's busy. And actually, so communication, we need to be more mindful and conscious of what we're saying and how we're saying it. But actually being more mindful and more conscious applies to everything. It applies to leadership, to hiring, to firing, to change management programs, to sales incentives. Let's stop and let's pause and let's just think a little bit harder. Are we doing the right things? What do we need to do better?
Big difference. Then all remains for me to say is Philip Atkinson, author of Be Wise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Hive, available in all best stores in the link below. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Paul.